Welcome back to another episode of Poly Talks. Today we'll be discussing a hypothetical matchup for the 2024 presidential election. And this is a matchup between Democrat Joe Biden and Republican Ron Desantis. Now, neither of these two candidates have formally announced their candidacy for the 2024 presidential election, although Joe Biden has heavily implied it, and Ron DeSantis certainly may step in to give Trump a run for his money. And considering all the baggage Trump has and his divisive nature, Ron DeSantis might be able to swoop in and be kind of a rallying figure for Republicans. And perhaps he could even clinch the 2024 Republican primary, which would have been considered an impossibility a few years ago when Donald Trump reigned supreme over the Republican Party. But this election scenario is actually much worse for Joe Biden. Joe Biden would almost certainly prefer he ran against Trump as opposed to Ron DeSantis, and that is because Ron DeSantis is has the same popular policies and ideas as Donald Trump, but without all the baggage. And that baggage is most likely what cost him the 2020 presidential election, and even then it was a close election. And that's why if Donald Trump ran again, I see Joe Biden winning it again, even despite his shortcomings in old age. However, we can see here that in a hypothetical polling, and keep in mind polling is not always accurate, this is only one poll, actually Joe Biden would be up against Ron DeSantis by 0.6%. But also keep in mind, the United States does not use a popular vote system. They use the Electoral College, and also a large percentage of the population remains undecided. But even just looking at the results here, a 0.6% margin is half of the 1.2% margin Joe Biden would have against Donald Trump. So it's clear that Ron DeSantis is certainly a better Republican candidate in 2024, although, of course, whether he wins the primary remains to be seen. And today, regardless of the polls, I will be doing an Electoral College hypothetical prediction for both these candidates. So first we'll start with the safe states that, while perhaps Washington has been thrown around as like a light clave recently, really I tend to prefer to do my safe states based off of probability instead of margin. So if there's a state that typically always goes to Democrats by a little less than 15%, then I consider it safe as long as there's a near certain chance that Democrats will win there, and that's regardless of whether or not it may be a little under 15%. Although, for the most part, the margins correspond to probabilities. So here's Vermont, and of course, I've probably missed a few. Of course, there's Hawaii, and Illinois, I would say, is likely. So we'll get into the likely states now for Democrats, doing this one at a time. Maine is a complicated one. Maine at large is likely, and Maine's District 1, I believe, yes, is Democratic. And then we'll discuss Maine's District 2. So, now other likely Democratic states, Colorado, New Mexico, both of these pretty self-explanatory. And I believe we're approaching the end of them. Minnesota, I'd say, is likely. And Virginia. And yes, I think New Hampshire, I would say, is lean, so we'll get to that later. But now we'll get to Republican safe states. Again, no surprises here. These are just the safe states, so Utah and Oklahoma, Kansas. And I'm afraid this is covered here by the... Yes, I don't know. That's a tad annoying. Maine's District 2. Yeah, because that's actually the one... Hold on, I have an idea here. So, apologies for this. Aha! This. Okay, so, and then I say, yeah, I'm gonna have to do it this way. And then, no, that's the one. There we go. Okay, so, finally, Nebraska has been filled out, and I say the first district or the second district of Nebraska is a likely for Joe Biden. It seems to be an odd one. It's been kind of alternating in recent years. Joe Biden actually did very well in 2020, despite despite the fact that Hillary Clinton lost this district. So I do expect against Ron Desantis, though, this district will remain firm for Democrats. It's a little redder now because of redistricting, I believe, but still, I think he'll carry it by a likely margin. And for other Republican states, Louisiana, most of these southern states, not Georgia, of course, Iowa, I say, is likely, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, South Carolina, and Alaska is likely, I think. Democrats have been doing better there recently. But right off the bat here, just characterizing safe and likely states, we can say that Ron DeSantis is way behind Joe Biden, but that all changes with the addition of Texas. So now Ron DeSantis is at 171 and Joe Biden's at 219, but it's still not over yet because Ron DeSantis, of course, hails from Florida, and he's very popular in that state, won his election by around 20 points. I would almost say that this would be a safe margin, but just because I think the presidential election can be a little different than a governor's election, I think he'll win it by a likely margin, probably just on the border of that 15%. So now it's a bit more of a closer race, and the election will come down to a few critical states. So first, we'll characterize any that I believe will go to Biden, and those are actually most of the Rust Belt states. So Pennsylvania, I think, is lean. Michigan, I believe, is lean. And this is because Joe Biden, that's really where his appeal is at, the Rust Belt. That's kind of why he did well in 2020 and was able to win, is Hillary Clinton had very poor appeal in the Rust Belt, but Joe Biden kind of changed that, and I think he's a very, not necessarily popular, but respected figure in Michigan and Pennsylvania, especially considering his background. We'll get to Wisconsin later because I think that one's a little more complicated to characterize. But now we'll go to New Hampshire, again, another state that really I think Joe Biden has more appeal in than Ron DeSantis. And it has been going to Democrats recently. I can't remember the last time it went to Republicans on the presidential level. So, despite the Republican governor there, I think that's another Democratic hold. And in Nevada, I think this is a controversial one. I think that, yes, there are many Hispanics and Latinos and Latinas in Nevada, and of course, Ron DeSantis may appeal to those as he does in Florida, but just considering these are on the opposite side of the country, they have kind of different political systems, and ultimately, I think Nevada probably will end up going to Joe Biden by a tilt margin, especially considering that really no one has been able to win Nevada on the Republican side for the past few elections. In fact, the only major statewide candidate that actually won in 2022 in Nevada was Joe Lombardo for the governor, and that was mainly connected to Sisolak's unpopularity. But this is where the election stands right now after we characterize Nevada, and it's actually shockingly good for Joe Biden. And he only needs 7 more electoral votes to sweep the presidency. But it's not over yet, because I do think Ron DeSantis would win by Ohio a likely margin, just like Trump did. So I don't think I need to provide much more explanation. We've seen how Ohio has shifted over the past few years. And then here's where it's going to get interesting. I'm going to go and say that Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina are all lean red states for Ron DeSantis. And that is because I think that, especially because Georgia is very close to Florida, I think Ron DeSantis will have much more appeal there than Trump did. And I think that actually, despite the growing African American population, I think actually Georgia might surprise us in this election and go for Ron DeSantis. And Arizona, I think, unlike Nevada, it's very it's a little more Republican, I'd say, and I think that is a state where Ron DeSantis can really appeal. And in North Carolina, I think it's kind of the same story as Nevada, but for Republicans, I can't remember the last time. I think it was either 2008 or 2012 where Democrats won North Carolina, and it's kind of just a stubborn state and hasn't really been going towards the Democrats recently. And then it may only be one electoral district, but I think that that Maine's second district will go to Ron DeSantis just because it has been going to Donald Trump. And while Obama did win it, it's certainly trending Republican. And then I forgot actually to characterize DC, which is obviously 3 solid electoral votes. So this is actually an extremely close election. And guess what it all comes down to? Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin is an extremely difficult case because it has been actually going strongly for Democrats recently. But then again, in 2022, Ron DeSantis, who was kind of an unpopular senator, actually held on to his seat only by about a point. But I just think that's a sign that Democrats have got some real issues in Wisconsin. And to be honest, I think that Ron DeSantis, if he is to win a Rust Belt state, Wisconsin would be the one. So I'm actually going to say this is tilt R, which is going to give Ron DeSantis the very narrow victory. Now, I actually did not expect the election to be this close when I characterized it, and only when thinking about the individual states involved, it makes sense that this would be very close. Of course, I think Joe Biden would really utilize the Rust Belt region for his strategy, and he would try and win the election that way. Whereas Ron DeSantis would of course target the Rust Belt as well, but also states like Arizona, Georgia, Nevada to an extent. And I think honestly, states like Florida, Texas, and Ohio are already givens for Ron DeSantis. So this is extremely close, and it may be drastically different from now on. But I will make regular updates on this hypothetical scenario to see what has changed. And it's a fascinating case. So that is all for today. And thank you for tuning in to my hypothetical matchup. And I hope it provides some insight. Although, keep in mind, the 2024 election is still over a month and a half away. So, that's all. Thank you, everyone, and see you in another video shortly. Bye.